Servants, the shadows of history and mythology who bring a special flavor to the Fate franchise. These superpowered legends captivate us not only with the insane anime powers they have, but also with the spins the series gives to their tales, and using them to tell rich and exciting new stories. So yeah, it's always exciting to see new servants, especially when they premiere in a brand new branch of the series. Up to the release of Samurai Remnant, it was a lot of fun seeing people speculate and theorize about who the new servants could be, myself included. And now that I've sunk way too much time into the game, and maybe a part of my soul, I'm going to rank all of the servants, new and old, to see how well the game managed to use them. Of course, I'm not even going to pretend to be unbiased, so let's take a look at the 16 servants who feature in this game. And right at the bottom of the list is Arjuna, everyone's least favorite Indian servant. Sorry, Arjuna fans, if you actually exist, but it is glaringly obvious that he is just here to fill in the slot. The rogue archer doesn't interact meaningfully with any master and servant other than our main duo, and even then he mostly serves as an obstacle, either from pathetically weak misunderstandings or outright mind control. He offers nothing to the setting or the characters in it. No interesting conflicts, no ideology to oppose Arya or Saber, and not even a hint of fun interactions with anyone. He is entirely irrelevant, and if swapped with any other archer from the series, nothing particularly changes. Hell, some of the other archers could have had some interesting reactions to Edo or other servants in the game. But nope, instead we get a bland cardboard cutout of a character who could be easily taken out and no one would really notice. But to give credit where it's due, his attacks, specifically his arrows, look great, and visually they make him stand out amongst the other servants. As for his gameplay itself, it's alright. Playing him doesn't really excite me, but doesn't leave me begging to use a different character either, and his noble phantasm is a treat for the eyes, which can be said for most of the servants in the game. I don't really hate or love Arjuna, he's just about as mid as it gets. Unfortunately, with a cast this size, some people just aren't gonna get a lot of screen time. Much like Ku. Look, I like Ku a lot, but he suffers in the same way Arjuna does. If removed from the plot, nothing really changes except Iori needing one less nap. I'm not about to repeat all I said for Arjuna, but pretty much everything I said there applies here, except for the fact that I actually like Ku. And at the very least, he does interact with Gilgamesh in one of his digressions. I'd say his gameplay is a little worse than Arjuna's though, and I never really looked forward to using them, although I did use his first affinity skill a ton, so that kinda made up for it. He'd be a lot higher if he weren't so irrelevant, but unfortunately, Fate's best dog is treated like a mutt here. At the very least, he got some good expressions out of the deal. Now, a fun thing with Samurai Remnant's different endings is that they all have different final bosses. Flames of Resentment has Chiemon, a broken, angry man who wants to drag Edo into hell. Entreat the Darkness has Iori and Saber clash due to Iori's obsession. And a Ray of Light has Zhang, a man so hell-bent on achieving his goals that he will play the villain to see them through. And, Caster's there too, I guess. Unfortunately, one of my favorite designs from the new servants is a waste of a villain. Put simply, Caster is an egomaniac who barely seems interested in the waxing moon ritual itself. Up until his master is killed, Caster doesn't even seem like he wants to be involved, only showing concern for his own records. But the moment Tsuchimikado dies, he becomes dead set on obtaining the waxing moon. Not for the sake of his departed master, but to make sure his records are perfect, which is perfectly fine motivation for a villain. But if that's the case, why would he spend so little time helping his master if he actually does care about the ritual? It just comes off as lazy and makes it hard for me to take him seriously as a villain. And he is only one of the 3 servants in the game who was unplayable, so even that can't save him. I can only hope one of the DLC does make an effort to show what Caster was doing the whole time, because as it stands, he's just a bland villain with no screen time or consistency. If it weren't for the scene where he brilliantly manipulates Zhang, he'd easily be at the bottom of the list. Hopefully somewhere in the franchise, this design will eventually get its time to shine. Like I insinuated before, I think Chiemon's actually a really good antagonist. I think he's so good, in fact, he manages to completely take away the spotlight from his servant. Zhang here kinda gets the short end of the stick. The relationship she has with her master is inherently interesting, as is the change she underwent just to answer his summons, but it's underexplored. There is a lot to dig into when it comes to their dynamic, but the game never decides to let us see Zhang's side of it. What glimpses of it we do see are rare and generally make Chiemon more interesting. She acts to give us a deeper look into her master, and she excels in that role. But in not being any more than eyes to view Chiemon through, she doesn't get much of anything for herself. But that is still an acceptable role for a character to play in a narrative, so why am I ranking her this low? I really hate playing as Zhang. Her basic attacks don't feel great to use, and her affinity skills don't have the impact that the other characters do. Her noble phantasm is pretty cool, though that's the standard for servants in this game. She serves her role in the narrative perfectly, but that leaves nothing for herself, which is fine for the plot as a whole, but for her character? not so much. Which is a bit of a shame, since I thought the concept behind this genre is actually pretty good. Man, I have some mixed feelings on Arya. Tamamo is by far my favorite character in Fate. So a cute small Tamamo that deserves all the head pat should be an instant 10 out of 10 for me, right? Well, the issue is, she still acts like Tamamo, which is a bit of a problem for a character who looks 10 years old. Some may say I'm being oversensitive about this, but I've got those Western sensibilities in me, and damn if they don't tell me Arya is a big yikes. But everything else about her is great. She's super cute, her theme is outstanding, the voice acting's top-notch, she's helpful in gameplay, especially for the leyline fights, and she's Tamamo! But that biggest selling point is what ruins her for me! They even give me false hope when they first meet by saying she wants to just be friends with Yori. But her digressions feel very much like she's trying to romance him. And speaking of those digressions, they really are just one fetch quest after the next, and don't really involve the small writer herself all that much. If she was derived from any other character, she'd probably be dead last. But like I said, I'm not hiding my biases. So close to a perfectly wholesome, cute character. But damn it, this franchise hasn't given me plenty of reasons to be paranoid about this kind of stuff. I don't have a lot to say about Otachibana Hime, mostly because they probably get less screen time than any other servant. And I only really like her as much as I do because she's so kind to Saber. And as you'll see later, I really like Saber. So by proxy, I really like Otachibana Hime. But I really can't dismiss that she and Kaya are nothing more than plot devices most of the time. Besides her two fairly brief exchanges with Saber, she gets no involvement in the plot as an actual character. To make matters even worse, it's never actually explained why she's so important to the plot. We get several moments where characters will address what she's needed for, but never the how it works, and it leaves the whole plot point feeling forced. With a bit of time, I'm sure she could have made her mark, but unfortunately, that's just not what we got. I have a real love-hate relationship with Li Shuwen in this game. On the one hand, he is treated much better than Arjuna or Ku, actually allying himself with one of the opposing masters. And even though we don't get much of it, it is nice to see him look out for Yui Shosetsu. He's already a likable character on his own, with his wise mentor aura and charisma. Unlike Ku and Arjuna, I actually remember my encounters with this guy. And one detail I actually really like about him here is he doesn't mind giving out his true name, because no one can know it since he's from the future. He's got a really unique personality that I just love to see in cutscenes. Unfortunately, he is one of the playable servants, and that's where the hate part of the love-hate relationship kicks in. I despise playing as Li Shuwen. His immobile but powerful playstyle is janky and really doesn't satisfy me. If his damage was pumped up because of how slow he felt, that would be one thing, but he isn't particularly strong when compared to the other servants. His attacks look cool when you fight him, but somehow feel lesser when you're the one in control. At the very least, he has one of the coolest looking noble phantasms in the game. I mean, look at this! So damn cool! Another rogue servant, another character who's just there for fan service. And I mean that more when talking about Gilgamesh than I mean it with any other servant. He has no relevancy to the main plot whatsoever, and he could easily be written out with nothing changing. So why is he this high up? Because he has some of my favorite digressions of the game. And that is mostly due to Gil himself. His over-the-top arrogance is fun to watch, and it is a joy anytime Saber is forced to put up with him. I also just really enjoyed the scene where Zhang and Zhou Yu meet him. Just a lot of fun overall. And while he's unfortunately unplayable, he does have a secret boss fight, which, while not particularly difficult, is fun. And he even gets his own joke ending. While I don't care for Gilgamesh as an antagonist, when he is on the side of the protagonist, he just becomes the fun kind of asshole I can't get enough of. To be totally honest, Koga Saburo is only this high because of his design and concept. He's a snake ninja who has an army of snake underlings and stretchy limbs. And all of that is cool enough to make me love this guy. And his personality isn't all that bad, we just don't see much of it, which can make it a little difficult to understand his decisions throughout the game, but he doesn't feel contradictory like Castor. In particular, his decision to let himself be mind controlled seems to run contrary to his loyalty to Dorothea, but he says so himself that he's testing his master, so this is closer to tough love than anything. And I guess his faith in her wasn't misplaced, as no matter what route you end up on, she does manage to stop the assassin. But yeah, outside of his design and concept, I just don't have a lot more good to say about him. His noble phantasm is easily the lamest in the game. He gets this large snake mech thing, which looks incredibly silly, and makes it so hard to take him seriously. And just like the game's other assassin, I never really looked forward to playing as this guy. The limbs that make use of his stretchy limbs are really cool, but everything else just lacks impact for me. His damage output isn't lacking, but it doesn't feel all that powerful, and feeling is what Muso games are all about. Regardless though, this snake assassin is great, and please, bring him to Fate Go! He looks so cool! Cersei, like the other pre-existing servants, feels like she was forced in for marketing, honestly. But the thing is, you see, I just really like Cersei. Her personality is as fun as ever. She actually has some really unique pig-related interactions with the main characters, and even if slightly, she does impact the narrative. Plus her digressions are really good. They're all fun, fairly short, and filled with good character interactions. Of course, like most of the rogue servants, I'd say she's greatly underutilized, but at least she isn't a victim of the brainwashing plotline. But all of that pales in comparison to what brings her this high on the list. In this humble bird's opinion, Cersei is by far the most fun servant to play as in this game. Her attacks are flashy and fun, and almost all of her heavy attacks are huge AoEs that decimate the battlefield. Anytime you get to use her is incredibly satisfying, which is why she was my most used servant throughout the game. And her noble phantasm not only looks great here, but like everything else about her, it's simply fun, which is more than enough reason for me to put her in the top half of this list. And finally, we arrive to our first enemy and our most universal. No matter what ending you choose, Ushi-Gozen stands between you and the waxing moon. The same Ushi-Gozen that tried to kill Iori in his sleep. The same Ushi-Gozen that's been a thorn in everyone's side since the ritual began. The same Ushi-Gozen that sincerely desires to fulfill their master's wish, though she is capable of understanding what makes her methods wrong. All of these things make her one of the most effective antagonists in the game, and what makes the fight against her so rewarding. Of course, the spectacle that is her noble phantasm helps with that. A massive headless bull standing over Edo makes for an outrageously cool set piece, even if it is a little underutilized. It takes the combined efforts of several of the masters and servants of the ritual to bring an end to Ushi-Gozen. And her fight is fun, although maybe a little too easy considering how late in the game it is. All of her attacks are a little too easy to see coming, so it's really easy to get the counter off. And while the aesthetic for her power mimics Raiko, I think it just looks so great here. And I really do love how she genuinely thinks she's granting her master's wish. It's wonderfully insane and makes her even more threatening. If I were ranking the antagonists of the game, she would easily be taking the number 2 spot. It is plain to see why the rogue Saber hunts her so relentlessly. And moving on from the evil Oni to her hunter, we have Yoshinaka. He is an incredibly simplistic man, only wanting 2 things. First, he just wants to dispose of the evil Oni that he's been able to sense since he manifested. And 2, he wants to see his beloved wife again. Unfortunately, she's not here right now, so I guess he's just gotta settle for kicking Ushi's ass. And once he realizes Iori and Saber also want Rider's head, he is more than willing to lend a hand to them whenever they need it. Whenever our heroes find themselves in danger, it is almost always Yoshinaka over here that's saving the day. And in one of the endings, he even puts down Ushi's giant bull himself. And he's not even arrogant about it. He's nothing but nice to the characters not standing in his way, and shows Iori and Saber the respect they deserve. And his gameplay matches his intensity, with slower but large attacks that feel powerful. Although, I do have to admit his NP does kind of feel unfitting for his intense personality. But that only goes for the one in gameplay. His second one he uses against Ushi-Gozen was epic. His heroics feel like the perfect counter to Ushi's destructive nature, and he's there to support our heroes as often as Ushi is to get in their way. Zhou Yu and Zhang make for a really charming duo in this game. They are realistically nice guys, desperate to do what they can for their own countries. The fact the 2 of them are shown being so honest with each other sells that they really have become legitimate friends. And the 2 of them being our allies for a large part of the game definitely helps raise their appeal. But even without their digressions still make their dynamic fun and clear. Unlike Chiemon, whose bond with Jean felt like it took away from her, these 2 amplify the other's charms. We see the good that these 2 want to do, and it's not hard to get the player to want to support them, at the very least until the end of the ritual. And to make it even better, Zhou Yu is a total badass, fighting off Berserker with his NP, which makes it heartbreaking when Archer has to take his own life to make sure he can't hurt his master and allies while he's being controlled. It's a fittingly dramatic moment that signals the beginning of the end of the ritual. Things are finally heating up and not everyone's gonna make it through. It's just a shame that the first casualty was such a cool dude. It's easy to see why Zhang was so broken up by his loss. And partnered with his own amazing story is some really fun gameplay. Once again, satisfying's the name of the game as all of Archer's attacks feel great to use. In this case, his fiery tornado was my favorite of his attacks. And while I think his NP is a little lackluster when used in-game, when cutscenes use it, it is in the running for one of the best looking NPs in the franchise. And his boss fight taking place inside of his Noble Phantasm is one of the most unique and fun battles of the game. Here's hoping that this isn't the last we see of the strategist of the Han. Musashi is one of my favorite characters in Fate Grand Order, so seeing her have such a large role in this game was a treat. And as Iori's master, she is a perfect fit for the narrative. As a berserker, her thirst for battle is as high as it gets, and she will take any excuse to get involved with whatever conflict is going on. She has great interactions with Dayu and Samson as well, making any time they are on screen together a good time. One of my favorite details of the game is how that Musashi, having knowledge of Chaldea, knows more about Holy Grails than pretty much any other character in the game. I especially love how it's hinted that she actually recognizes Li Shuin. Such a good detail that rewards fans of Fate Go. Even outside of that though, Musashi is great. While she never really feels like a main character, she is definitely the secondary character with the most screen time. One of my favorite parts was just seeing her get on Zhou Yu and Zhang's nerves. She really lives up to her class here, and it is a lot of fun seeing her drive the two insane. And speaking of fun, she is easily in the top 3 most fun servants to play. And one of the coolest details with her heavy attacks is that they each represent one of the stances of her sword style. And her Noble Phantasm looks phenomenal. A strict upgrade from its depiction in Fate Go, and easily one of the best in the game. And to top it all off is her boss fight. As swordsmen, Musashi and Iori cannot resist the urge to fight each other before she has to depart this time. And damn if their clash isn't fun. One of the best in the game. While I was getting everything in the game, I managed to fight Musashi 6 times, and not a single time was it not a blast. The simple 1v1 match of 2 characters with similar movesets make for a fast-paced and epic clash. And even after Iori catches her off guard and wins the fight, there's no hard feelings. She sees him off with a smile, ready for her next adventure. She shines brilliantly in this game, and I had a blast every time she was on screen. But she was slightly outdone by the other guardian of Yoshiwara, Samson. Despite only saying a single word in the entire game, they characterized him so well. From his tireless devotion to nervously thanking Iori, every time that they hint at Samson's personality, he comes across as a wholesome and loyal man. His dedication to Dayu, who treated him with nothing but respect and kindness, is admirable. And on the combat side of things, they sell him almost as well as Heracles was in Fate Stay Night. He is an unstoppable force that at best can only be pacified for a few minutes. His massive attacks make him feel like a raging force of nature, but it is slightly undercut by the damage he does, not quite living up to what the animations promise. Honestly, given how rarely you actually get the chance to control him, I think they should have just gone all out and made him absolutely broken. But hey, that's just me. I just want to live that berserker fantasy. At the very least, the story makes it clear that no other servant is beating this behemoth of a man by themselves. Not only is he shown taking Zhou Yu's Noble Phantasm, a high-ranking reality marble, but that was already after a prolonged fight against Zhou Yu and Musashi teamed up. If it weren't for his weak point being so major, I'm not sure they would have been able to take him down. Speaking of which, his death is easily the most impactful of the game for me. From the moment Dayu cuts his hair, and all the giant man can do is stare in surprise as memories of his beloved wife's betrayal flash through his mind. And as he lays fading away, all his addled mind can do is try and hold an umbrella for Dayu. And in his last moment of clarity, he pushes past the thought of his wife, and all he can do is thank Dayu for stopping his senseless rampage. While I wouldn't say he quite lives up to the berserker he obviously draws inspiration from, Samson is a gloriously kind man, and his bond with Dayu was a wonderful thing to experience. And it's even more amazing considering they conveyed his personality with a single spoken word and a couple of grunts. And if it weren't for one of our main characters being as good as they are, he easily would have taken the top spot. Yamato Takeru lived a hard life, a blood-stained conqueror trudging from one battle to the next, never feeling joy from what they had to do. Otachibana Hime, the only person who could bring some much-needed light to their life, sacrificed herself so her lover could continue their mission. Throughout this greatly unfortunate life, Yamato Takeru never met a single person they could call a friend. And after the slaughter of countless warriors, monsters, and gods, they breathed their final breath. Ages passed, and with the beginning of the waxing moon ritual, Yamato Takeru found himself as the servant to Miyamoto Iori. At first, they acted a bit cold towards their master, but with the discovery that Japan was now in an era of peace, they can't help but be overwhelmed by the wonder of a world not dictated by bloodshed. It's the simple things that get their attention. Food vendors, buildings, and good views. the simple things that the people of Edo may have taken for granted in their day-to-day. And leading them through the strange new world was Miyamoto Iori, who witnessed every single moment of joy and wonder pass through the incredibly honest Saber. As an incredibly powerful swordsman, Yamato Takeru had no need to deceive anyone, so the idea of lying never really crosses their mind, and they have just as hard of a time understanding why others choose to lie. Just as Yamato found themselves incredibly honest, they found that no one could truly deceive them. Over time, after going through many hardships with Iori, Saber begins to respect the human swordsman, and rather than view him as a means to an end, begins to feel a sense of friendship with the master. And perhaps the greatest stroke of luck they could ever hope for, they end up reuniting with their departed wife. It's through the second chance at life that Yamato Takeru comes to love this peaceful world and wishes to defend it, now that it's reached a point they never could have dreamed it reaching. So they keep on fighting, not for a wish that needs to be granted, but to safeguard a world they consider truly beautiful. And as for how their story ends, that's up to the player and Iori. In one world, perhaps they simply upheld their ideals and protected Edo with their newfound friend. In another, they may have upheld a promise to protect their beloved, but tragically in another, they find themselves forced to confront their one and only friend in a duel to the death to safeguard this wonderful future they found themselves in. And in these final moments, they strike Iori down. Rather than pity or belittle him, Yamato chooses to lay down and talk openly with him as his life fades. And once Iori is truly gone, Yamato admits to not needing the waxing moon. After all they wanted was a confidant and comrade, someone they could call a true friend. And in their own master, Yamato found their wish granted. And once they finish their business with the waxing moon, they depart this world, as all heroic spirits must without an anchor. The last thing on their mind as they fade, being the bittersweet memories of Miyamoto Iori, their one and only friend. I absolutely adored Saber in this game. They are an absolute blast to play, an utter powerhouse of a servant. But at the end of the day, what makes Saber shine for me is the charm they show when experiencing Edo, and the heartfelt and honest friendship they develop with Iori. It's not a stretch saying that Saber is the very heart of this game. Without them, Samurai Remnant just wouldn't have been as joyful or sorrowful of an experience as it is. And I, for one, cannot wait to see what Type Moon does with this positively fantastic character in the future. Thanks for listening to my insane ramblings. See you next time.